Hello, everybody. It's noon, it's Wednesday, so we are at PentaBAR. This is the 24th edition for this year and one of the many hundreds that we did over the years. I am your host for this session. My name is Andrei Gavrilă, and I am head of product development in Pentalog. We will spend the next hour with Sebastian Rogberry discussing about Docusaurus, which is Facebook's answer to site generation. More specifically, we will see how Docusaurus is generating beautiful documentation sites in no time, allowing you to focus on what matters, the content and the quality of the information of these sites. We will start discussing about why Docusaurus and when would we need it. And then we will see with Sebastian how easy it is to do the setup. It will only take us minutes. Afterwards, we will deep dive into some of the more advanced features of Docusaurus, like versioning or internationalization. Sebastian Rogberry is a React.js freelancer, editor in React Hebdo French newsletter, that is the weekly React French newsletter, and the lead maintainer on Docusaurus. He's passionate about React, cross-platform, serverless, TypeScript, and functional programming. An early adopter of React.js, he started using it in 2014, and throughout all of this period, he has contributed to its growth and ecosystem. Welcome, Sebastian. It is really nice to have you here. How are you?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. So, yeah, I'm going to present Docusaurus today. It's the first time I give this this presentation. Hopefully, I will give it a few more times in the coming year. So we will have a very short introduction with some slides, and then we are going to do a live demo where I'm going to present you the workflow of using Docusaurus, how to set it up, and also more advanced features. So I'm going to share my screen to show the slides. Wait a minute. Yeah, I think you should see the slides, right?
We do see them.
Great.
Maybe before we start, Sebastian,
yeah?
You could tell us a little about yourself in this line of why React, why Facebook, and then we go to the presentation.
Yeah, okay. Actually, I had a slide about me, so but so I'm a React developer. I'm working I'm a developer for more than 10 years now. I've been a Scala developer in the past and Java also, and since 2014, I am a React early adopter. I was a CTO startup at that time. Then I became a freelancer, and I was mostly selling consulting services to French startups. And lately, since over a year, I've been working with Facebook on Docusaurus, still as a freelancer. And I've been the lead maintainer of this project now for quite some time. So I'm somehow the main maintainer of the project, and happy to work on it. So even if I have a lot of React experience, the Docusaurus is mostly Node.js code, but it is using React.js for the front-end part. So I'm going to explain all that.
Excellent.
So I have to share the screen again. Okay, so I think you see the screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so what is Docusaurus? What I'm going to present, it's a tool to create beautiful documentation websites in no time. So basically, you can get something online in 10 minutes, and this is what we are going to do. So I'm going to present some slides to give you some context about what is Docusaurus exactly, how it is it was created, and how it differs from existing tools. And then we are going to do a live demo of the tool so that you understand better what it does. And also we will use a live playground that you can run in your browser so that actually you will be able to play with it immediately without installing anything on your computer, which is pretty cool. So let's go, let's start the presentation. So I'm going to skip this slide because I already talked a bit about myself, but if you want to follow the news about React, I have Twitter threads on which you can stay up to date with the React ecosystem. Every week I send a thread on Twitter, and also for French people, I have a French newsletter. Eventually, I will also publish an English newsletter soon, but it's not ready yet. So why Docusaurus? It's a solution that permits to build beautiful documentation very fast, and also it's beautiful and modern documentation website because there are single page applications. So when you click on the link, it navigates to the next page without showing some kind of a blank screen. This is the single page application navigation. You can get some result very fast. We will show that later. The main value proposition is that you can focus on your content. You just have to write the Markdown files, and then we do the rest for you. You don't have to work on making things beautiful, creating the UI of your documentation from the beginning. You can still do that, but you will be able to do that later. And so basically, we provide a theme for you that is good enough. And eventually, if you want to improve it, you can do that later. So it is themable. You can change everything from colors to more deeply integrated things like, for example, interactive elements. You can change the way they work and override somehow the defaults that we provide for you. And we also provide a lot of advanced features like versioning, internationalization to translate your documentation, search with Algolia, and MDX, which is a technology that permits to make your doc very interactive using React. So what is the story behind Docusaurus? It's a Facebook project. The thing is, around 5 years ago, Facebook released a lot of open source projects, and they had a pain point, which was they were copy-pasting the same Jekyll template over and over again from one technical project to another. And this is a bit painful to maintain over time, particularly if you have a lot of projects to maintain. So they were looking to create a tool that permits to more easily publish documentation website for their technical projects online. And as they were creating React, they were looking to create a tool that was using React to do that. So around 4 years ago, Docusaurus version 1 was born. It was a static site generator that was based on React, but it was not a single page application. So it was kind of a static site generator that was like the existing static site generators that you may be used to. Docusaurus 2 was born a bit later, and this time it is a real static site generator that builds a single page application. So React is used inside the front-end part of the application, and it permits to make the documentation much more interactive than the first version. So version 2 exists since already more than 2 years. We have been in alpha for a very long time, and now we are in beta. It doesn't mean that the software is not ready to be used, and you can see later that there are a lot of users already. But we want to make sure that the API is stable enough so that people that have a lot of customizations don't have any pain to upgrade from one version to another. So it's important to have a very stable APIs for our users that are leveraging the high customizations that we provide.
Okay, so now if I would want to use it, I will go directly for version 2.
Yeah, directly. We don't recommend to use version 1. Actually, despite version 1 being the official version that is not in beta, we recommend to use version 2. And actually, I think there are 5 more times users of version 2 now than version 1, despite it being in beta. So really, you should really use version 2 because version 1 will not be maintained anymore except security fixes. So, and version 2, I believe personally that version 2 is more stable than version 1 and has more features. So we just keep the beta tag because we want to stabilize some APIs, but it's stable. You don't have to be afraid of the beta tag or things like that. It's not, I mean, for the majority of users, you can consider it stable. It's maybe not stable on some parts, but those are parts that maybe you won't even use, so it's not very important for many users. So who is using Docusaurus? We have a showcase page where we reference all the sites that our users submit. There is a favorite section when you can see the most beautiful ones. Personally, there are some that I really like the QuestDB website, the React Native website, the Relay website, the Superbase website. We have a lot of users. I think there are more than 1,000 sites on the showcase already. And in the wild, I think maybe there is no, there is 100 sites in the showcase, and I think there are maybe 1,000 Docusaurus sites in the wild, but it's hard to know because there are many Docusaurus sites that are internal to companies, so we don't know exactly how much people are using Docusaurus. We are just seeing that the usage is growing. So I think in the next 6 months, we maybe did multiply by 3 the usage of Docusaurus. So on the technical side, Docusaurus is a static site generator. It's like a Jamstack framework. It builds a modern and single-page application based on React and Node.js. And also, it makes the documentation very interactive with MDX. We will see later what it is. It's some kind of extension of Markdown that permits to use React inside Markdown. It can build a progressive web application that you can install on your computer and use offline. And also, it's very easy to deploy on hosting that is free, like GitHub Pages. And you can also use modern alternatives like Netlify and Vercel that also have a generous free plan that you can use for small doc websites. So who should use Docusaurus? I think Docusaurus tells a story similar to the Pareto principle. It's for people that want to invest a small amount of money and get very good results. Maybe not the perfect result that you dream of, but it's a good enough result that can go a long way. And maybe later you will try to upgrade to something better if you want to build something custom. But the idea is that you should be able to get started fast with Docusaurus, have immediately good results, and then later see if you want to invest more. So it's mainly for technical people. You have to be familiar a bit with Git because we don't provide a UI to edit the documentation. Eventually, you can use some external tools that you can try to plug with Docusaurus, but we don't provide much integrations for now. So best usage for Docusaurus is from technical people that are used to Git and the pull request workflow. Also, it's useful for React developers because they can leverage their existing skills to build interactive documentation. So for example, if you want to have a documentation with tabs, for example, you can switch from one language to another so that you can see, for example, the code samples in JavaScript, then in TypeScript, then in Java and things like that. You can build this kind of experience easily with Docusaurus. You can also build some kind of API documentation where you can actually send real requests to some API directly through your documentation, maybe like Stripe is doing and things like that. So we have a lot of flexibility of what we can do in terms of interactivity in your doc. It's not either for non-technical people because, I mean, if you are from the marketing team, maybe you want to have a UI to edit the documentation and you are not very friendly with Git and the pull request workflow, so it's not very good for you currently. Maybe we will improve this part in the future, but it's not the main focus currently.
A small question here, Sebastian,
yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it is something completely or rather difficult to do. I mean, somebody who's non-technical would need to learn a little bit Git and Markdown overall, and will be able to do modifications. So it's not that is impossible. You just need these skills.
It's not impossible. Actually, you can also create a GitHub account and use the GitHub interface to edit the Markdown files here. But I don't think it's the best experience because you don't have a good preview, and also the interactive elements that you can add with React and MDX won't be displayed in the GitHub interface because it doesn't run the React components that we can put in your doc. And eventually, if you want to have some kind of UI on top of Docusaurus, I think the best solutions currently are maybe CMS, like there are Git-based CMS like Netlify CMS or Forestry that actually will create some kind of UI so that you can edit through an interface, and then this CMS will commit to Git so that Docusaurus will see your changes and rebuild the static site with the changes. So for me, it's the best integration that we currently have, but it's not something official. It's something you have to work on if you want to make it work.
It's clear, thank you.
And also, I think it's not ideal. For example, if you have a lot of money and you are willing to have a lot of flexibility and you want really the best result that you can have, maybe Docusaurus is not the best solution because at the end of the day, it's an opinionated tool. So if you don't agree with our opinions, you are going to fight a bit the framework to do what you want. So in such case, maybe you want to use another tool that is more, maybe less opinionated, like a regular static site generator. You will have to spend a lot more time to build your documentation system, but at least you will have exactly the result that you want. So if you want maximum flexibility, you have to own your tech stack and build your doc yourself. If you are Stripe, maybe you don't want to use Docusaurus because you have maybe a team of 5 people that are working full-time on your documentation website, and you can compete with a framework that do everything for you by default. So it's not the same. These people are not in the target of Docusaurus. So let's compare a bit Docusaurus with existing tools. There are tools with an UI like Wiki, Confluence, WordPress. I think those tools are great for marketing teams and things like that because it's easy to handle. You don't have to be technical. You don't have to master Git to understand that. You just have to use the UI editors to edit the documentation. But the thing is, often those documentations are internal, and there is no good front end with a good SEO properties that will permit Google to index your documentation. And also sometimes those tools are a bit slow, it depends. So it's not the same use case, I think. There are also regular static site generators like Gatsby, Next, Nuxt, Jekyll, Go, Eleventy. So those tools are less opinionated than Docusaurus. So you can use them, but you will have to build the docs feature yourself on top of them. So you will have to invest some time to make a documentation website. You won't have a documentation website in 10 minutes like Docusaurus provide. And there are also software as a service tools like Gitbook and README, but those are paid tools. So you don't own the technical stack. You have to rely on their services, and you have to pay them also because they are not free. And I think Docusaurus compare best with frameworks like VuePress, which is like the Docusaurus equivalent for Vue. I think there is VidPress now too. There is mkdocs that is used widely in the Python ecosystem. Also Nextra, which is a documentation framework on top of Next, and Docs, which I think is on top of Gatsby. So those are the most similar tools than Docusaurus. But I think Docusaurus has some serious competitive advantages over these tools, and hopefully I will be able to convince you about that. So now we are going to do a live demo. If you have a computer with a modern browser on it, like Chrome, what I suggest is that you click, no, you don't click, but you open this URL in your browser, and we are going to actually do the try Docusaurus together. So here you are landing on a page which show the Docusaurus playgrounds. We have two choices. What I suggest is that we use StackBlitz. StackBlitz is some kind of online editor, and they have a very cool technology that permits somehow to run Node.js inside your browser using WebAssembly and things like that. So it's very cutting edge, very technical, very interesting. And I've tried a bit, and I think it's good enough to do the demo today. So I just launched the StackBlitz playground here. So this is what we get when we use the playground. So basically, it's installed the Node.js packages for us, and then it runs the Docusaurus site, and then we can see that it appears here in the preview. So here, I'm not going to initialize a Docusaurus site because it takes a bit, I mean, it's not very long. You just have to type a command. For example, I can show you in a terminal how you can initialize a Docusaurus site inside the terminal. So basically, you just have to type, I'm going to go to the desktop, and maybe I'm going to type this command. So this is a command that we have on our documentation. Then it will take 1 or 2 minutes to install all the packages, and then you will be able to enter the folder and run npm start or yarn start, which is the command that you can use to start Docusaurus. It will start Docusaurus in dev mode. So I'm not going to show this because I think it's better if you can try also yourself on your computer. So if you can open the StackBlitz playground in Chrome, you will be able to play with Docusaurus immediately. So you can use the start command for local development, which will start a live server that will reload the changes that you made so that you can see them live. And when you are ready to publish your site for production or test it, you can run the build command here to build your website, which will generate static HTML files that you can deploy on many websites. So this is the initial template that you get when you initialize a Docusaurus site. You can see that maybe I will open it in a new window because the layout is a bit different on mobile. I think it's better to see it on a large desktop window. So the initialize template has a tutorial. We will see. We will work through the tutorial just a bit later. It also has a blog that you can write on a blog post if you want about your project. And we have also support for dark and light mode by default. And we have a landing page that you can customize with anything you want. And we have some basic layout items like the nav bar here. We also have the footer here, which have footer items. And on the documentation, we have a sidebar here that permits to navigate through the different documentation pages. And each documentation page has a table of content here that you can, on which you can see the headings of your document. And you can also, so you can click on the headings here to navigate also to the appropriate section. So let's go back to the init template. You can see that there is a blog folder here. We have 3 blog posts. If we go on the blog of Docusaurus, we can see that there are the recent posts here. The 3 blog posts are here. If you look at the doc, we can see that there is the intro and there is 2 subfolders here. And if you go to the tutorial, you can see there is the intro and the two categories inside the sidebar that you can unfold. There is the SRC folder in which you can put React components. For example, you can see that there is a page here. It's the React component that permits to code your home page of Docusaurus. So you can use whatever you want for the home page. And here it is. And you can also add some custom CSS. We will see later how it works. And you can also add static images and things like that if you want to display images on your website. another important part of Docusaurus is that you have a configuration file, which I will explain a bit later, on which you can register plugins and some basic metadata about your site. And we have a sidebar file that we will explain later also, that permits to create this part of the documentation site. So first, before looking at the details of the Docusaurus website, what I'd like to show you is that how easy it is to deploy a Docusaurus site. So you can get your documentation online very fast. For example, here it's the default Docusaurus starter. Basically, it's the exact same content as the one you see in StackBlitz here. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to use a convenient Jamstack service that is called Netlify, and I'm going to deploy this website to my Netlify account and see that you can get a live result very fast about Docusaurus. So I'm going to search for Docusaurus starter. Yeah. So I just select the repository, which is this one. Then actually I don't have to do anything because somehow it has been able to figure out which is the build command, which it is in the README and the package.json file. And also the published directory is the build folder, which is exactly where Docusaurus creates the files to deploy the website after build. So we are just going to, in 2 clicks, basically, we can deploy the site. We just have to select the appropriate repository, and then you just have to click deploy, and then you have your site online.
Okay, so short question here. So Netlify is more like a hosting service
so,
for.
Well, the responsibility of Docusaurus is basically to take all your configuration and documentation and pages and things like that, and build a folder in which there are HTML files that are static. There is no server. So it's like regular files. For example, on your file system, you have my documents with maybe docs and Excel documents and whatever. Basically, Docusaurus creates a folder like that, but with HTML files, and then you can just host the files wherever you want. You can self-host behind a regular proxy like Apache or Nginx or something like that. Or now there are dedicated tools like Netlify and Vercel, which are the leaders for this kind of hosting, and those permits to easily deploy static websites to those services. So it's very easy. You just have to click a few buttons on the interface, and then eventually you have to customize the build command because sometimes you need a bit more to build your site. But what it does is that, for example, it will install Node.js in a Docker container. It will install the dependencies. Then it will run your build command.
And this is the part that generates the static files, right?
Yeah, exactly. So this generates the build folder, which contains the HTML files, and then it deploys the build folder containing the HTML files, and then it's online. So basically, you can look here. I mean, I can show you. It is online, and normally you can, if I don't know where is the I don't know where can I paste the link on Zoom. Okay, so I don't know, but maybe it doesn't matter much. And once you are here, you can change your site name. For example, if I want to have it named pentalog.netlify.app, you can see here. I just have to press save, and then my website here is available at pentalog.netlify.app immediately and for free. Basically, there is a free plan on those tools, and you just have it deployed immediately, and it's free. So this is really great because if you don't have a very strong usage, basically you can host your documentation for free and very easily. And it's much more than that. It's very convenient because, for example, if you go to GitHub here, and I'm going to edit, for example, a document here and say, for example, I'm going to replace all that with hello Pentalog, no typo. I'm just going to create, I need to create a pull request. So I'm going to create a new branch and submit a pull request, and I'm going to show you what it does. I'm going to create the pull request here. Oh, I don't know what happens. So here I have created a pull request with some documentation edition. What is going to happen? So we have a bot here that is going to run Netlify, and it will basically build a preview of the website with the changes that you made in the pull request, and you will be able to see the changes in the pull request so that you can review it before merging it. So this is very convenient to have this kind of workflow, because if you have a large documentation edition on your website, maybe you want to be able to have your peers review your changes so that they are sure that everything is valid, because your documentation somehow is part of your product, so it has to be good and double checked by many people. You can see that here, for example, the deploy preview has been marked as ready in the pull request. You have a Netlify bot that is giving you the preview link, and then you can open the preview link here. And if you look at the introduction documentation, you see that the site is live with a URL that will stay online forever unless you choose to delete it, and people will be able to use this and copy paste it to their peers so that they can review the updates that you made to your documentation. So this is a great workflow. Not only Netlify provide this, if you use Vercel, it's also great. If you use, for example, GitHub Pages, which is a free popular hosting option for static websites, you don't have all that. So really, I recommend to use Netlify or Vercel for documentation websites, because you have a much better experience. So this is how you deploy Docusaurus in a very convenient way. Now we can see how to actually use Docusaurus. So there is a bug in the. So what we can do is that we can go to look at the tutorial. It's very fast. I try to make it very small so that you can understand the core value of Docusaurus in a few minutes. So the intro here, we already have initialized the site, so we won't do this again. We already have StackBlitz starting the site, so it's not necessary to do it again. What we can do, however, is that we are going to edit the intro documentation here. And maybe I can put it, I don't know, how can I make this more convenient? I think there is a bug in there. I will try to reload the page. Maybe it will fix the problem. So the thing is, if I edit this document, I should be able to see the live result of the edit directly in the preview. Or if you have your local environment, it also works. So it's not just StackBlitz that do that. It's also working if you try on your computer with your regular setup. So here is the intro documentation. Just waiting for it to build. So the intro documentation is this one. For example, if I change some line and say hello Pentalog, I should be able to see the live result appear immediately on the screen. So this is the very first part of the tutorial. We have seen that the hot reload and the site is able to start and it hot reload correctly. Now we can see how to create a page. So the thing is, everything you create in this folder become a page. So for example, here you can see that there is index.js, and this index.js is actually the home page of the site. So you can modify it. For example, if you want to say hello. I'm going to the home page first, then I'm going to edit here. Hello Pentalog from Docusaurus. Yeah, actually it's not in the layout, it's the metadata page title. So I choose the bad bad item. So I'm going to add a header here. Hello, H1. So this is a React component, and you can see here it appears here. So it's not a good looking home page, but at least it shows that you can customize and do whatever you want in your home page. And you can also, for example, create a second page. I'm going to create a page called second.js. What I'm going to do is create a React component. For example, import React from React. Default second page, and then I'm going to return some React component. Yeah, missing function up.
And you also have a typo in import React. I think you.
Yeah, my Mac keyboard is a bit broken, so sometimes I have duplicate letters. So now if I go to second here, you can see that there is the page, but the thing is we don't have the layout. So the thing is we have to import the layout so that you can choose to apply the main layout or not, depending on your use case. Maybe sometimes you have pages where you don't want the layout, so you can use, for example, the layout from, I don't remember the import service, it's this one. If you want to import the layout here, you can do that. And instead of the div here, we are going to use the layout component. And now you have the Docusaurus layout with the navigation and things like that. So this is a React page, but it's also possible to create a Markdown page, for example. I'm going to create markdown.md here and create a file with a Markdown title. Hello. And now I'm going to go to the Markdown page URL. So as you've seen, if the file is called Markdown, then the URL will be /Markdown. So it's quite easy to figure out what will be the name of the page. And now you can see that the page is appears here and is available and display what you wrote in the Markdown file.
And this Markdown page automatically includes everything in the layout that you showed us.
Yeah, it automatically. I think we will make it configurable later, but for now it's just very simple. If you want to create some page that is not like a standalone page of your doc, we will say later, because you can also create Markdown files in the docs folder here, but it's a bit different because they have a sidebar, they are linked together in a certain order and things like that. This feature is more for if you want to create some standalone pages in Markdown without having to care about coding in React. If you don't know how to use React, you can just write Markdown content and then you have something online. So let's continue the tutorial. We were in the create page tutorial. We have seen how to create a React page and then a Markdown page. Now we can continue here. We are going to create a document. So
just another question, Sebastian, sorry. And my pages will automatically be part of the structure of the site, so they will appear in the tree view on the menu and all of that, just because we created them?
No, actually, this is something we will see a bit later.
Okay.
But when you create a page, it doesn't automatically appear on the layout. Eventually, for the docs, it will, because we try to make your life easier. For example, here we have a menu here, which is basically the sidebar. It's the same. I've shown later on desktop, the sidebar is on the right, and on mobile, it's the drawer button at the bottom, like that. We just changed that because this button is a bit confusing. So now the sidebar also appears when you click here. It will display the sidebar, and there is no button at the bottom anymore. So This is a weird UX that we just changed, but for now in this demo it's still like that. So the document is a bit different kind of page because the documents are groups of pages that are connected through some kind of navigation with a sidebar and things like that. So you can see here, for example, that the documentation here, there is an order. We start with the intro, then we have the basics, then we have the extras. We want this order because it's important to have the correct order. So the thing is, we have a docs folder here with all the documentations that are here in the sidebar. And we have a way to configure the sidebar, which is the sidebars file here. The sidebars file will, by default, try to auto-generate the sidebar from your file system structure. So, for example, if you have a folder, it will create a sidebar category. The sidebar category is an item that you can fold and unfold like that. This is a category. So these items belong to folders, and these items belong to regular Markdown files. And you can see that the structure that you have in the docs folder here is the same as you have in the sidebar here. But the thing is that auto generation works, but by default it will be an alphabetical order. So if you really want to have control over the order of items, you have to add some kind of metadata at the top of the files. Like, for example, you have a sidebar position front matter, and in the folders you also have a metadata files. For example, if you want to change the label of the sidebar category and not being, I mean, sometimes we want a label that is not the same as the folder name. So this permits to add some additional metadata. Here you can see that, for example, I did a number at the end of the label of this category, but I didn't have to change the folder name because I want to keep this folder name.
Yeah, makes sense.
So how do we create a document? You just have to basically create a file here. We are going to create, for example, a test. No, I think hello.md. We are going to add some title here. Hello, how are you? So it should appear here. You can see that it is here. So the thing is, it's a bit annoying because it's at the bottom. So if you want, for example, to put it at the first, here the intro is at position N1. So maybe we want the intro to be the hello document, the hello item to appear before the intro. So you have to use the sidebar position to make this work. Somehow it doesn't work. I don't know why. maybe it's the stack bits, which is not. There are a few bugs. So, but normally it works. So if you use sidebar position 1, actually it should put the sidebar at the top, the hello item here at the very top. Maybe I should try 0 because 0 is before 1. I don't know. No, it doesn't work. So yeah, there is a bug. I think it's stack bits because normally this works in Docusaurus. So I think you get the idea. So we created the documentation. It appeared automatically in the sidebar here, and then you can just add some metadata to customize the sidebar label and things like that. If you want, for example, I think you can use sidebar label here, which is will be the label that appears in. Oh, I think there is a bug in StackBlitz because this is supposed to take the label that we define here. So we have seen that we can create a document. We have seen that we can we have a sidebar file that permits to create the sidebar, and that by default it creates the sidebar structure, and it tries to infer it from your file system structure. So the thing is, maybe you want to have more control about your sidebar. So for example, if you want to make it not auto-generated, but make it somehow static, where you define exactly which categories and which items are created and not necessarily in the exact order and the exact same structure as the file system. You can also, for example, create a category like I'm going to create a category named Pentalog. Oh, stop. I keep doing typos. Oh, there is something weird. I think I'm going to reload the project because there is a bit something a bit buggy with the.
That's okay. And while you are reloading, Alexandru was asking us on the Q&A if we can order headers alphabetically.
What do you mean by headers? The front matter, the metadata at the top of the document?
Maybe you meant the links in the sidebar, Alexandru?
Maybe, I think maybe these, I think maybe it talks about these items which are called front matter. It's some metadata that you put on Markdown. And by default, Docusaurus is already alphabetical. So for example, if you have a folder that starts with an A and then a folder with a B, then it will keep this order. But I think it doesn't make sense for a lot of documentation because you don't want to order things alphabetically, except maybe for reference, implementation, documentation, and things like that. But if you want to create a documentation, you want, for example, to have your introduction at the very beginning, despite not being the first letter in the alphabet. So you really maybe need control over the positions and do the things like you want.
So for the ones that have position, that's what is taken into account. And when I wouldn't specify a position, it will go alphabetically by default, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I hope this answers your question, Alexandru.
Okay, so I don't know what happens, but there is some bug in StackBlitz, I think, that prevents me from doing what I want. I'm going to revert the changes just to make sure that the rest is working. Okay. Yeah, so I don't know what happens. This is a bit weird. Not something. Maybe I can reset the playground. It's a bit new, this StackBlitz playground. This is very convenient, and I really trust their technology. But this was a bit risky for me to choose to try to do the presentation on this. I think it's interesting because you can try locally the things, but ultimately you'd better to install Docusaurus in your IDE and run Next.js on your computer to really try it. It's not very much more complicated, but I think it's cool to be able to run in the browser directly. So yeah, so I've reset the playground, so it should be able to continue the tutorial. So we have seen how to create pages, how to create documentation. Now what we have seen how the sidebars work. Maybe we can create a blog here. Basically, it's the same. You just have to create, for example, a file here on the docs folder. You can create. I will add a date for today. Now, if you go to the blog here, oh, it doesn't work. I don't know why. So yeah, maybe there are some part of my demo that don't work, but normally it's supposed to work, and you should see your blog post appear here. So I don't know what happens exactly. Maybe I can try to restart the server to see. Maybe sometimes it works better if you restart. Sometimes. Okay, well, maybe I will try to add some front matter. Yeah, I think
now
it did
works.
something, but it's not exactly clear.
Actually, it works because
yeah, I
see
think it's
duplicated.
working,
So with the metadata,
it's just that you have to specify the title in another way. Yeah. I don't always remember all the details of of Docusaurus, so yeah. So if you read the doc, actually it works better. So now if we go back to the blog, yeah, there is something wrong, but it's almost working. So I think you get the point. You just have to create a file in this folder, and then you have the document, the blog post appearing here. And if you run this locally, it will work. Maybe it's the stylist playground that has the problem only. So
just to be a little mindful of
how to create a blog.
So, sorry to interrupt.
Back
just
to the tutorial here. What is left? We have already seen how to deploy the site. I think it's important that I display some of the Markdown features. We have seen that there are some metadata that we can add at the top of the documentation to customize some specific parts for a single documentation. And then we support regular Markdown syntax. So for example, you can create links with this kind of syntax. Maybe if you use GitHub readmes and things like that, you are used to this. We also support images. I don't know why it's broken, although here it's not supposed to be. We also support code blocks, for example, and you can add a title and you have a syntax highlighting for a lot of languages. And we also have a way to write admonitions, which are some kind of alert banners. They are a bit ugly in this demo, but we just redesigned them, so now they are a lot better. And the most interesting part is the React component. So basically, you can add a React component inside your documentation, and then it is going to become interactive. So, for example, I'm just going to copy paste this thing. No, maybe I will just edit the file here. It will be easier. You can see, for example, that here we are adding some React code inside your documentation, and it is going to work, and you will be able to use the React component inside your documentation and somehow interleave it with React. And for example, we have seen that the component that we create here has some kind of click listener. And if you click on it, then you will see that the item is clickable and you can get some behavior. So if you want, for example, to add rich interactive elements here, like playgrounds and things like that, you really have a lot of freedom to do whatever you want. Any React component that can work on a regular React app is able to be inserted inside of your documentation very easily. So I don't necessarily recommend to code React components inside the doc like I do here, but maybe you'd rather create your components in a separate folder and then import them in the doc so that you can use them easily a bit everywhere. So if you have some common components, you just have to extract them in your components folder and then use them in every documentation that you want. And we also provide a lot of components that we'll display a bit later. But for example, on our site, we have a lot of features. We can import real code from your project inside a component. For example, there is a syntax to import some source code from a component and then render it inside the documentation. You can also import one Markdown file inside another. So if you want to create some kind of partial content that you can import into multiple places so that you don't have to write multiple times the same content, we provide that. You can see also that even our own documentation is leveraging React because, for example, we have this element is displayed inside a fake browser window, which is a React component we created. You can use tabs, for example, if you want. What I think is interesting, for example, is that you can create tabs, for example, that are in sync. For example, you can create one tab per SDK language or one tab per OS, and then if the user selects a tab, then the choice will be persisted, and if he navigates to another document, the choice will still be used, and the choice is, I think it gives a better user experience for the user to have only to select the language he is interested once, and then see all the code blocks in the correct language later.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So we have a lot of interesting features. We can also display code blocks in tabs. For example, if you, I don't know here where it is. Yeah, we also have some way to have a live code editor. It only works for JavaScript, but for example, I can say I can add something here, and you can see that the React code here is actually run inside your browser, and you can see the result. So if you have a JavaScript library, for example, it's convenient to document it so that the user is able to play with it immediately. Some other thing that is maybe interesting, for example, that I shown you, is that you can use tabs to display code blocks per language. So I think it's quite convenient. And as I've shown you, it's possible to save the choice. So if the user is interested to see code blocks in JavaScript, you just have to click the JavaScript tab once and then see all the JavaScript tabs of your site, the JavaScript code blocks on your site without having much work to do. So this is the new design for the alerts that I've shown you. What else is interesting? If you are a mathematician, you can display math formulas inside Docusaurus. I think it's quite interesting. We also have some various things that are useful for assets. For example, I think this one is pretty cool. We have a dark mode, and you can display different images according to the current color mode that you are in. So we have a lot of Markdown features like that, and you can build, more importantly, we offer the tools so that you can build your own Markdown features on top of Docusaurus. So we have a lot of users that are doing very interesting things, like, for example, they have a TypeScript library, and they wrote a plugin so that the TypeScript code is automatically converted to a tab displaying both the JavaScript code and the TypeScript code. So they just have to write the code blocks in one language, and somehow the other language is automatically written and the tabs are automatically added, and they are sure that both are stay in sync over time, so there is no possible typos, and even the code blocks is verified with TypeScript, so that they are sure that the code block is correct somehow.
Great.
So it will be hard to demonstrate all the features of the Docusaurus. I think I won't
definitely,
have time
and maybe in the
do all that. Maybe I can just show the versioning feature. I'm going to use the terminal here to show the versioning feature. What I'm going to do is to type the command on the terminal. You can see here I'm going to type yarn Docusaurus docs version 1.0.0, and this will create a new folder here that will contain a copy of your documentation. Basically, it's a copy of the docs folder, and you will be able to maintain an older version of your library over time. And if you want to create another one, you can just create, now I have to change the version, maybe 2.0.0, and it will create another folder here. You can see now that there are two folders here. In the version folders here, you also have the version sidebars, which is a representation of a sidebar of a given version. So somehow it's creating an archive of your documentation at a given point in time, and then you can edit it if you want. For example, if you have if you are at version 3 and you still work on version 1 because you are backporting security fixes and things like that, you can still edit the older documentation and it will still be available online. For example, on the Docusaurus site, we can see that there is a drop down here that you can have. We have all the versions that are on the Docusaurus site. It's not recommended to have too much versions inside the Docusaurus site because it's going to slow down the build time of your site. So when they are very old and you don't plan to change the doc anymore. You can just archive them, and for example, you can deploy them to Netlify standalone deployments, so that they stay online forever, but you don't have to care about them anymore. It's just a regular link that stays there. This is what we do, for example, for version 1. We have an archive deployment with the older site of Docusaurus. So what can I show you also? No, this is not, maybe I won't have time to show the internationalization feature. I think what is important maybe is that
Sebastian?
I show how we can add items to the navbar and the footer. For example, here we can see that there is this is the navbar of your site. So this is not exactly the same as the sidebar. The sidebar is to navigate across the documentations. The navbar is more some main elements that appear on all the pages of your site. And if you want to have some navbar items, you will have to go to the configuration files. There is temconfig.navbar.items. And for example, you can add an item here. I want maybe to add a Pentalog to the navbar, it doesn't, my server is not started, so this is why I have to start the web.
But Sebastian,
this configuration file is contains some global site configuration. You can configure, for example, the footer. You can configure the navbar. You can configure some basic metadata about the Docusaurus site, and you can also configure some presets and plugins and things like that, which permits to enrich the experience of Docusaurus. And the plugins also offer some configuration. For example, we have a plugin for the docs, for the pages, and for the blog. So those are 3 different separate plugins with all different options, and then you can try to read the doc and try the different options to configure to your needs. So I'm not going to show you all this, but just show you that you can add an item to the VC item to the navbar quite easily. No, this is not this. Okay, so it doesn't work anymore. I think it's the playground. Yeah, so I don't know if I have some time left to present anything else, but it looks like my playground is a bit broken. So,
but Sebastian, maybe can you hear me now?
Sorry, I don't hear you.
Interesting. Yeah, it seems something is broken.
Yes, I noticed sometimes I have to reload the page to make it work. This is too cutting edge technology, so there are some bugs. I mean, it's quite crazy that they are able to run Docusaurus inside the browser. If you compare it to Code Sandbox, for example, they are running a remote Docker container on their servers for you, and you just connect to them. But here, it's really running inside your browser, and no file actually hit any remote server. So this is really something very interesting, but it's not working perfectly.
Did you hear me now? I wonder.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, so yeah, it was a glitch. I was trying to ask you a couple of things. We still have 2 questions, Sebastian. Maybe we finish with those questions.
Yeah.
The first one is from Andrew, and he's asking us if internationalization is ready for Docusaurus V2. So yeah, maybe tell us a couple of things about that, please.
So this was part of my demo, but I didn't have much time. Actually, we have the ability to start the Docusaurus server inside a single language. I can actually try to. I'm going to show you something pretty cool. I'm going to. Oh, I don't know what happens. What happens now? Okay. I'm going to reload again. But the thing is, you can start Docusaurus in a given languages, and then it will translate automatically the theme and the layout for you, and then you just have to translate your your own documentations and blog posts to the language. We are based on the file system convention, so there is a IATN folder on the Docusaurus side that you can create, and then you just have to put the translated files at the correct location, and then they will appear on your translated site automatically. So it will be a bit complicated to do a short demo about that, but I can show, for example, I'm going to do something interesting, because we have support for right to left languages. For example, if I start the Docusaurus with the option local Fa, which is Farsi for the Persian language from Iran, I think, we are going to start the website in a different way that what it starts by default, because Farsi is a left to right language. So you can see here, for example, this is the 40 page of the Farsi language. So this is automatically translated for you, and you can see that the layout is flipped on the other side. And if you look here at your site, you can see that it is flipped. Obviously, it's not translated because you have to translate yourself your home page and things like that and provide the translations. But something interesting, for example, is that you have the scroll bar here on the other side. You can look at the blog post here. And what you see is that instead of displaying 1 minute reading time and things like that, it now displays this label in Farsi because it's automatically provided for you. And also we have a lot of little label elements. All the labels that are in the default theme of Docusaurus are actually provided for you. So if you look at the tutorial, for example, here, you can see that here it's supposed to be a button that says check next page. Okay, so we translate this label for you, but you have at the end of the day to translate the title of your documentation, because it's not something that we can translate for you. It's something you have to work on. So we can just translate the labels for you like that. And now, if you want to translate the documentations, you have to create, for example, you have to create a folder here like that, and then you have to create a subfolder with the translations here, which is the local that you start your site in, and then you put the Markdown files here, and they will be translated in when you run the site in Farsi. But if you run the site without the local option, then it will keep using the regular documentations, which remain the main source of truth. And we also provide a lot of documentation to use Docusaurus with Crowdin, which is a SaaS that permits to translate a documentation website easily. So yeah, I can display a bit you the interface to translate a site. Basically, the concept is that you write a configuration file, which permits to describe which are the files that you want to translate. Then you are going to upload the files to Crowdin. Then translators are going to translate the files on the Crowdin user interface. And then you are going in your build process to download back the translations. It will download them at the correct location because you will have configured Crowdin to do so. So Crowdin will actually download the files in this folder, for example, the translated folder that I mentioned. And then you have to build the site for the Farsi language. And then you have the site translated in the Farsi language. So if you look a bit about how this works, this is the public interface. You can click on the language you want to translate it. You will be able to select the files here to see how to translate them. And then the translators will use some kind of user interface to be able to translate one label after another. And what is great with this kind of software is that it keeps your source language. For example, I mean, if you do some major additions from in your English language, which is maybe your main source for the documentation, it's hard to keep up to date the other languages and make sure that they are all consistent and they display exactly the same information just in another language. So this kind of tool is really helpful because it permits to ensure that all the language keep staying in sync forever, and you don't have to do the edits from one language to another. You just have to translate the untranslated strings, and then it's fine. You have your site online. But in practice, it's still a bit challenging to use because, I mean, the user interface is not always very convenient. They have their own bugs and things like that. So like any external provider, there is some work to do that. And it's also time consuming to set up a website to be internationalized in a lot of languages. It takes a lot of time.
Excellent. Thank you. And maybe let's close with this last question from Alexandru. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, I don't see it.
Do you plan to implement an automatic doc generation feature in the future? For example, generate pages with component name, props, types, hooks for an existing React project?
There is an issue about integrating with CMS and having some kind of extension points for the plugins. For example, I've explained that there is the docs plugin, which is responsible to create the documentation pages and link them through a sidebar and a next previous navigation. So the thing is, if we create some auto-generated doc, what we want is basically to still have those features. We still want the sidebar to navigate from one doc to another. We still want to be able to navigate from the next doc to the previous doc and things like that. So what we want actually is to be able to extend the docs plugin so that it can integrate better with your docs generation workflow. So basically what we will do is generate the docs as at the very beginning, and then let the docs plugin read the docs that you just generated to group them through the sidebar and things like that. And this will also permits to integrate with a CMS and things like that, so that you can download the documentation from a CMS before actually trying to read them on your file system. So this is something we'd like to build in the future, but this is not something that for which we have official support today. But the thing is, many people are already generating their reference documentation ahead of time. For example, on your build system, what you can do is that you can download the documentation or generate them as a pre-build step, and then you just have to build your site with your generated documentation. So it's your responsibility for now to generate your documentation. We don't provide a way to do that for you. But I think there is some interest, particularly to do that for TypeScript projects, because we are basically, we have a lot of users that are JavaScript developers and also TypeScript too. So this is probably the first thing we will work on to make this happen.
Excellent. Thank you. Time really flies. It was great having you here with us, Sebastian. There was a lot of things that were really interesting on Docusaurus. If we would have more questions, or if we would like to know more, what would we do from your point of view?
So I think you can ask me on Twitter or by email, or if you want, you can go to sebastianlorber.com to visit my website. Or I'm most active on Twitter, so you can reach me there. Okay.
So I also want to thank the people that stayed with us until now. You have a feedback form in the chat. If you want to give us feedback, we would really appreciate it. Also, there are a lot of registered PentaBARs that you would be able to see. My colleague also shared that with you. Again, Sebastian, it was really great to have you with us, and I really do hope we will be able to do a session in the future and maybe look on some other things that you are doing.
I mostly do Docusaurus now, so I don't have a lot of other subjects to present, but maybe.
Yeah, we can speak a bit about React, about subjects from React Hebdo and the community there, trends. I think there would be a lot of interesting things that you would have to share with us. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.
And we will hope to see you on the next PentaBAR.
Thank you. See you.
Bye.